A mosquito does not find you by accident. She, and it is always a she, the males don't bite at all. They feed on plant nectar and never touch blood in their whole short lives. She is running a search pattern on you from 30, sometimes 50 feet away, built out of 3 separate signals stacked on top of each other. The carbon dioxide you breathe out draws her into your general direction from a distance. The heat coming off your skin and the particular chemical signature of your sweat narrow it down once she's closer. And in the last few feet, she's flying by sight toward movement and dark shapes against the sky. Stack those 3 things together, and a mosquito can find one specific person standing in a crowd of 10, land, and be feeding inside of 30 seconds. That's about 190 million years of evolution aimed at exactly one job. I bring this up first because almost everything people try against mosquitoes fights the wrong end of that process. They spray the yard, which kills whatever's flying through it at the moment of spraying, and does very little to the ones that hatch out the next morning. They light a candle and hope the scent throws off a hunting system built on 3 separate senses working together. And in the process, most of what they're using kills every other insect in range, along with the mosquito, including the honeybees working the clover 20 feet away, which never had anything to do with the problem in the first place. I farm 40 acres in Holmes County, Ohio, and I keep bees, 6 hives along the fence line behind the barn. Enough to pollinate our own orchard and Ruth's garden, with plenty left for the neighbors who bring their squash blossoms round in July, asking for a visit from my girls, which is what I call them, even though half of every hive is workers doing more useful labor in a day than most machines manage in a week. I have not lost a hive to anything I put out on this property, not once, in the years I've kept them. And my family has also not been eaten alive on our own porch in the evening, which is the part most videos on this topic never manage to deliver both halves of at the same time. Today I'm going to walk you through exactly how we handle mosquitoes on this farm without a single thing that would put my bees at risk, where the mosquitoes are actually coming from, which is almost never where people assume how to treat the water you can't get rid of without harming a single pollinator, what actually disrupts adult mosquitoes without a chemical fog. And the honest reasons a monthly spray truck exists as a business model, even though it isn't the most effective option on the table. By the end of this, you'll understand mosquito control well enough to build your own system, instead of paying somebody every month to reapply something that was never solving the actual problem. This is a long one. But mosquitoes are the animal that kills more people on this planet every year than any other through the diseases they carry, and I'd rather give you the complete picture than a version that leaves out the parts that actually matter. Here is the single fact that changes how you think about this problem once you actually understand it. A mosquito egg needs standing water to hatch, and depending on the species and the temperature, the entire path from egg to biting adult can take as little as a week to 10 days. Not a season, a week. Which means the mosquitoes biting you on a Friday evening in July may well have been eggs the previous Friday, in water sitting somewhere on your own property that you never thought to look at. The adult female, after she's had a blood meal, needs somewhere to lay that batch of eggs, and she is not particular about how much water it takes. A bottle cap left in the yard holds enough. The saucer under a potted plant holds enough. A wheelbarrow that collected 2 inches of rain 4 days ago and hasn't been emptied holds enough. A section of gutter that's been quietly holding a cup of water since the last storm because a few leaves are blocking the flow, that's often the single largest mosquito nursery on an entire property, and it's usually completely out of sight, 12 feet up, never inspected. The larvae that hatch out of those eggs live entirely in the water for most of their development, breathing through a small tube at the surface, feeding on organic matter in the water, and going through several growth stages before they become pupae, and then, within another day or two, adults that fly off to start the whole cycle again. Every single stage of that process, from egg to flying adult, happens somewhere you could reach with your own 2 hands if you knew where to look. This is the part almost every mosquito control conversation skips past too quickly to get to the part where they sell you something. The single most effective thing you can do about a mosquito problem has nothing to do with killing adult mosquitoes at all. It's finding and eliminating the standing water they're using to reproduce. Because every container of water you dump out is potentially dozens of future mosquitoes that never hatch, and that's a far bigger impact than killing individual adults one at a time with a spray that has to be reapplied every few weeks because it did nothing to stop the next generation from hatching right behind it. I want to explain the actual mechanism here, not just tell you it's bad, because understanding why it works the way it does is what lets you evaluate any product or service you're considering instead of just trusting a label. Most yard mosquito treatments, whether it's a service that drives through your neighborhood on a schedule or a product you buy and apply yourself, use what's called a broad-spectrum contact insecticide, most commonly from a chemical family called pyrethroids. The word broad-spectrum is the important part. These products work by disrupting the nervous system of insects on contact, and they are not selective about which insect that is. A pyrethroid doesn't know the difference between a mosquito and a honeybee. It kills based on contact and exposure, not species. When a truck sprays a fine mist across your entire yard, it settles on every leaf, every blossom, every blade of grass in the treated area, and it stays active on those surfaces for days to weeks afterward, depending on the product and the weather. Any pollinator that lands on a treated flower during that window is exposed to the same chemical that was meant for the mosquito that happened to be resting nearby. This is exactly why my own community has such a consistent complaint about the spray trucks that service the townships near us. It's not that anyone's trying to hurt the bees on purpose. It's that a treatment built to kill any insect it touches, applied across an entire yard, including every flowering plant in it, was never going to be selective enough to leave the pollinators alone, no matter how carefully it's applied. The mechanism itself doesn't allow for that kind of precision. You cannot broadly kill insects and selectively spare one particular insect at the same time, not with a contact spray covering an open yard. The honeybee population in this country has been in real decline for the better part of 2 decades now, and it's not any one single cause. There are several factors researchers point to, including habitat loss, certain agricultural chemical exposures, and the varroa mite, a parasite that's done serious damage to hive health nationwide. Broad-spectrum insecticide exposure in home landscapes is a documented contributor on that list. Not the only cause, but a real one, and it's one that's entirely within an individual homeowner's control to avoid, unlike some of the larger agricultural and environmental factors. None of what I'm about to show you requires that trade-off. Every method in the rest of this video either targets mosquitoes specifically enough that it leaves bees alone by its actual mechanism, not just by careful timing, or it doesn't involve a poison at all. This costs nothing but time, and it is genuinely the highest impact single thing on this entire list. I do this myself once a week through the warm months, and it takes me about 15 minutes for a property this size. Gutters are the one people miss most often because nobody looks up. If your gutters have any debris sitting in them, and most do, within a year of the last cleaning, they're very likely holding standing water after every rain, out of sight and out of mind. For as long as that debris stays in place, clean them, and you've likely eliminated one of the largest mosquito sources on the property without doing anything else. Anything that holds rainwater by accident, a tarp with a low spot in it, an upside-down trash can lid, a wheelbarrow left out, a child's toy left in the yard, needs to either be turned over, drained, or moved under cover after every rain. This is the least glamorous 15 minutes of yard work you'll do all summer, and it is more effective against mosquitoes than almost anything you could buy. Plant saucers and bird baths hold water on purpose, which means they need active management rather than just being ignored. A saucer under a potted plant should be emptied or the water dumped out at least every 3 to 4 days. Well inside the week or so window, a mosquito needs to complete its life cycle. A bird bath should have its water changed on the same schedule. The birds don't mind fresh water, and it denies mosquitoes the several consecutive undisturbed days they need. Old tires, if you have any sitting around a property, are worth mentioning specifically because they're disproportionately bad. The shape holds water in a way that's nearly impossible to fully drain even when you try to tip them over, and the rubber itself seems to make the water inside more attractive to egg-laying females than plain standing water elsewhere. If you've got tires sitting on your property for any reason, get rid of them, or at minimum drill drainage holes and store them somewhere covered. Low spots in the yard itself that hold water for more than a couple of days after a rain are worth addressing with actual drainage or fill dirt if it's a recurring problem, since you can't simply dump out a puddle in the lawn the way you can a bucket. Walk your whole property once a week during mosquito season with this list in your head, and you will eliminate the majority of the mosquito breeding actually happening on your own land, which for most suburban and rural properties is where the overwhelming majority of your local mosquito population is actually coming from, not blowing in from somewhere else the way people like to assume. Some water sources on a property are there on purpose and aren't going anywhere. A rain barrel collecting water for the garden, an ornamental pond, a livestock trough, a low area of a pasture that holds water after heavy rain for longer than you can practically drain. For these, source reduction isn't an option, but you can still stop mosquitoes from developing in that water without harming anything else that depends on it. The tool for this is a naturally occurring soil bacterium called Bacillus thuringiensis israelensis, sold at hardware and garden stores under various brand names, usually as small pre-measured tablets called dunks for larger bodies of water or a granular form for smaller containers. It works by producing a protein that's toxic specifically to the digestive system of mosquito larvae along with black fly and fungus gnat larvae, a very narrow group of related insects. And it does this because the toxin only activates in the specific alkaline gut chemistry those particular larvae have. It passes through essentially everything else, including fish, frogs, birds, pets, and people, without effect. And critically, for what we're covering today, it has no activity against bees at all, because a bee's digestive chemistry doesn't trigger it, and bees aren't drinking water out of a mosquito breeding site to begin with. This is registered and regulated by the EPA specifically for use in standing water, and it's been in general use for decades. I keep a container of the granular form in the barn and treat our rain barrel and the low corner of the horse pasture that holds water after a hard rain on roughly a monthly schedule through the warm months, more often after unusually heavy rain that dilutes what's already there. It's a 5-minute task, it costs very little over a season, and it stops that water from producing a single generation of mosquitoes without touching anything else living in or around it. For a livestock trough or any water source animals are actively drinking from, this same treatment is safe to use. It's approved for use in drinking water sources specifically because the mechanism doesn't affect anything other than those few target larvae. I'll add the honest caveat that you should always read the specific product label for exact application rates, since concentrations vary by brand, but the underlying compound and its safety profile is well established. Source reduction and larvicide treatment handle the eggs and larvae, but you're still going to have some adult mosquitoes moving through from neighboring properties you don't control, so here's what actually works against the adults without putting anything in the air that would affect a bee. Moving air is more effective than almost anyone realizes. Mosquitoes are weak, light flyers, and a box fan or oscillating fan set up on a porch or patio creates enough sustained airflow to make it genuinely difficult for them to land and feed, while also disrupting the carbon dioxide plume they use to find you in the first place. This is one of the most consistently recommended mosquito interventions from public health sources, and it works on pure physics. A mosquito simply cannot fly well enough against even a moderate breeze to hold a stable approach, and it does absolutely nothing to any bee, since bees are strong enough flyers that a porch fan is a non-issue for them, and bees aren't out foraging on your porch after dark anyway when mosquitoes are most active. Timing your outdoor activity matters more than most people account for. Mosquitoes are most active at dawn and dusk for most common species in this part of the country, when the light is low and the wind tends to die down. If you can shift the family's outdoor time even an hour away from those windows on the worst evening, you'll notice a real difference without doing anything else at all. Encouraging natural predators does real, ongoing work for you for free. Dragonflies are genuinely effective mosquito predators, both as nymphs living in water eating mosquito larvae, and as adults catching them in flight, and a small water feature or pond stocked appropriately will draw them in over a season. Bats consume large numbers of flying insects, including mosquitoes, over the course of a single night's feeding, and a bat house mounted on a pole or the side of a barn, positioned to get good afternoon sun exposure, can attract a resident colony over a season or two if the habitat around it supports them. Neither of these requires anything from you on an ongoing basis. Once they're established, they're doing continuous pest control every single night without a single dollar of upkeep. Protective clothing for the worst evenings is unglamorous advice, but it's honest. Long sleeves and pants in a lighter color during peak dawn and dusk hours genuinely reduces bites. Since mosquitoes are drawn partly by visual contrast and dark colors, and there's simply less exposed skin for the CO2 and heat tracking system I described at the start of this video to actually reach. Now, let me give you a straight answer here, rather than a list of folk remedies presented as equally effective, because this is a topic where the gap between what's genuinely proven and what's just widely repeated is bigger than most people realize. The repellents with the strongest, most consistently replicated evidence behind them are DEET, picaridin, and oil of lemon eucalyptus, which is a plant-derived compound, but one that's actually been tested rigorously enough to earn a recommendation from public health agencies, unlike most other plant oils marketed for the same purpose. All three, used at appropriate concentrations, provide real, measurable, hours-long protection, and none of them pose a meaningful risk to bees when used as skin or clothing repellents, since you're not spraying them into the environment the way a yard treatment works. They stay on the person wearing them. Citronella, whether in candle form or as an essential oil, is the most widely marketed natural option. And I'll be honest with you that the research on its real-world effectiveness is considerably weaker than its popularity would suggest. Studies on citronella candles in outdoor settings generally show a modest, short-lived effect at best, easily overwhelmed by even a light breeze, and nothing close to the protection level of the options I just mentioned. It's not useless, but it's not the strong solution the marketing implies either, and I'd rather you know that going in than waste money expecting it to do more than it actually can. I want to be honest about why the monthly spray service is still the default most people reach for, the same way I've been honest about this on every video on this channel. It isn't that anyone's hiding better information from you on purpose. A recurring spray contract is a business built on a monthly visit, and the service genuinely does reduce the adult mosquitoes present at the moment of spraying, which creates a visible, immediate result a customer can feel good about, even though it does very little about the eggs and larvae that will simply replace those adults within the week. Source reduction, by contrast, is something you do yourself. It isn't a product anyone sells you in a recurring contract, and its biggest results are invisible. Mosquitoes that simply never hatch because you emptied a saucer, which nobody notices the absence of the way they'd notice a truck showing up. That's the honest economic reality. A business built around monthly visits does not have much incentive to teach a customer a 15-minute weekly habit that would reduce how often they need that visit in the first place. It's not a conspiracy. It's simply that the free, more effective option was never going to be the one with a sales team behind it. Real numbers, same as I always give you. A standard residential mosquito spray contract commonly runs somewhere between $50 and $100 per visit, applied every 2 to 3 weeks through the warm season, which for a typical 6-month season can add up to several hundred to over $1,000, and it needs to be renewed every single year indefinitely, with the bee safety trade-off built permanently into that ongoing cost. The approach I've walked you through today costs you your own time for the weekly walk-around, which is free. A container of BTI granules or dunks running somewhere in the $10 to $20 range that lasts most of a season for a typical residential water source. A fan you very likely already own, and if you choose to build one, a bat house running maybe $30 to $50 in materials for a one-time investment that keeps producing results for years. You're looking at perhaps $20 to $70 total for a full season one time, compared to hundreds or more paid out every single year indefinitely for a service that puts your local pollinators at risk to deliver a result this approach achieves without that trade-off. Walk your property once, with the list from earlier in this video in your head. Gutters, saucers, anything holding rainwater by accident. That single walk, 15 minutes, will very likely be the biggest reduction in mosquitoes you see all season before you've spent $1 on anything else. Tell me in the comments what you find when you actually look. I wonder how much standing water people discover on their own property once they know where to check.